Boom, 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 boom. Okay, welcome to Dynasty Saturday Night 5. As you might see on the ticker there below, we are pre-recording. We are not live. I mean, listen, you got us 2 weeks in a row. If you're expecting 2 live ones 2 weeks in a row, slow down. We're just getting back into things. I'm Brian Ford here on the Dynasty Fantasy Football Podcast of the Going For 2 Live Network with my co-host Josh Walker. Josh, how you doing?
Good. Had a busy week this week, so we had to pre-record on a Friday. So I guess today we're Dynasty Friday Night 5. So that's fun. Yeah, I'm good.
Freaky
Happy
Friday.
to get back into some more indecisions because it was really hard to narrow it down before. So, and it's a little too early, I think, to really dive into rookies. So,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Senior Bowl is going to certainly shuffle some guys around, give us a little more clarity. So that's probably, a good time to get even deeper into it. I mean, I am who I am. So even though I try to not get obsessed over it, I've still got my spreadsheet started and like notes and sort of like vague tiers of each position in my head. But yeah, it's definitely early in the process. If you're listening on the Going For Two live podcast audio feed, please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. If you're watching here on YouTube, please make sure that you like, comment, subscribe, notifications, all that jazz. Feed the algorithm monster what it must be fed. We are a Dynasty Fantasy Football podcast that uses lists of 5 to talk about Dynasty Fantasy Football. As Josh alluded to last week, we looked at indecision, right? Players who are sort of, not to be dramatic, at a crossroads or at a critical juncture, and have a case for them and a case against them. And we were discussing, which case we might buy more, right? And really, there's so many of these question mark players, especially this time of year when coaches, OCs aren't decided, free agency, draft picks, right? So, there's some room to maybe get some value that's going to go up from some of this, and there's some room to mess up, which is one of the reasons why I'm probably quieter this time of year until I have a little bit more information as far as like Senior Bowl, combine, free agency, things like that, right? Josh, fresh apparently from your tour of duty in Nam, this episode, did you do anything differently than you did last episode? Like, I think for the most part, I still stuck with guys who are sort of uncertain because they've fallen, except for like maybe one of these guys.
yeah, I tried to, at least 2 of mine are going to be veterans that I've kind of seen all over the place. And a lot of this one I did was not so much rankings and like 80 early ADP and stuff like that, but I did sentiment on like Twitter because I follow a lot of people on Twitter in the space, and I picked the guys where I've seen some really wide range of outcomes for how people feel about them. So I kind of did that just to give my insights and try and make sure we, including me, are not being too reactionary. Maybe we are. So yeah, just kind of went by what I'm seeing, some wild like variations on Twitter and other social media sites.
Yeah. I think wide range of outcomes, both in reality and in the takes you see, is a very good way to describe it. Our show, as always, brought to you by Underdog Fantasy Football. Underdog has it all, right? Obviously famous for its best ball, which will be kicking up again, sooner than we think. But also, player pick'ems, DFS style, like weekly best ball, including playoff stuff that they've had. They have other major sports besides football. I know Josh enjoys baseball. I just kind of have just not really paid attention to any sport other than football recently. So why am I talking about Underdog? Not only are they great, not only are they sponsoring us, but if you are a new account for Underdog, you can make your first deposit today. And if you use the promo code GF2, Underdog will match up to $100 of that first deposit. So if you're watching here on the visuals, we have a nice shiny QR code for you to scan. Otherwise, go to underdog.com or download the Underdog app, start an account, make your first deposit, put in promo code GF2, get $100 of that deposit, up to $100 of that deposit matched, and start playing, maybe start winning, who knows? I certainly could use some winning and some money. Things are rough around here. All
Yep.
right. So, why don't you kick us off with your first of part 2 of Dynasty Indecision?
Yeah, so I thought about saving this person for last, but I'm going to lead off with it because it's the person I see people talking about the most on Twitter. It's Justin Fields.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the debate right now has been on whether they should keep him or go with Caleb Williams. And my feeling on this is his situation is going to get better regardless. So just to start out, I have him ranked at QB9, which is well above market with KTC and Fantasy Calc, which KTC is at QB15, Fantasy Calc's at QB14. I still have him in the top 10. I still have him as like an early second and startup pick, maybe into the first if a bunch of quarterbacks went and you just want to get one. But yeah, like I said, I think whether he gets traded or not, I think the situation is going to improve. If he stays with Chicago, they're likely going to get Marvin Harrison. Anything could happen, but they're likely going to have high draft picks to help get him some weapons. They'll hopefully bolster the offensive line. And if he does get traded, I think it will be to a better situation that either has a better line or better weapons that just needs a quarterback to kind of help make them better. I think he still has a lead upside, and I think he's performed admirably in a really tough spot. A lot of people were just writing him out, and he still was mature in the press conferences, talked about how he wants to be here, how he wants to play for the fans. And I think he played really well. I think he got way too much hate for how he played given his situation around. And my hope is either way, he gets a better play caller who can work to his strengths. I know there's inefficiency when it comes to him making reads or trying to read the defense, but I think his arm and leg talent are elite enough to where if you get a good offensive coordinator that can make things easier for him and give him some confidence, I think he's going to return to like a top 6 or 7 quarterback, especially in Dynasty. So I think regardless of the situation, stock should be up for him, but it's not. People act like he sucks, and he was one of PFF's highest graded passers coming out of college. So I don't think he's just bad at football.
Yeah, I mean, we could do a whole episode on the Justin Fields saga, right? And I think one of the things that we've talked about on the show is this. Okay, so let me ask you this: a couple things. First off, is the ranking of 9, does that bake in that the situation is going to improve, or if the situation improves, like I don't know, whatever. Say he goes to Atlanta tomorrow and whatever, right?
Yeah.
Are you going to bump him up to 7, or is that it's already baked in?
I think it's pretty much baked in. The 2 I have ahead of him at 8 and 7 is Anthony Richardson and Burrow, and I could see me moving him up maybe over Anthony Richardson, especially if he goes to the Falcons and already has 2 elite catchers, like pass catchers, and a really good running back. Honestly, 2 good running backs, has a good system where he doesn't have to run the ball so much. I might move him up to 7 or 8 because Burrow's been injured. Richardson's coming off a bad injury, and he, at least in his rookie year, he played a little reckless with not being afraid to take hits, trying to lower his shoulder, and that's just going to lead to injuries, as we've seen with Lamar Jackson, even Justin Fields. So I might move him up 1, 2 spots, but I have him at 9, just expecting that that's a pretty good spot to have him. And in a startup, I still want Anthony Richardson and Joe Burrow ahead of him. So
another question for you, and we've talked about this. So whether it's in Chicago or Atlanta or anywhere else, this is like what, maybe like the 5th offense that he's going to have to learn, or the 5th play caller that he's working with.
yeah.
Does that concern you that it's another year of learning something?
It does. That's why I put it in there. I hope it's an offensive coordinator who, like Mike McDaniels, builds their offense around the talent they have. And I don't think that happened in Chicago. I think they were very stubborn about the offense they wanted to run. They didn't have good running backs, so their run game was just pretty bad all year anyways. So I'm hoping that he goes to somewhere that has an offensive coordinator that will build around him and the weapons they have and just make it easier, because that is tough having to switch offenses like this. So you definitely do got to take that in. And if he goes somewhere with a bad offensive coordinator like Greg Roman or something like that, then I'm going to have to drop him a little bit, because it's too much to ask for somebody.
Do you think Roman would be okay though, because of, say what you want about the dynamism of the offense he ran in Baltimore, but I mean, certainly Lamar Jackson was productive in fantasy.
It would. I I don't want Justin Fields running that much because I don't know what it is about him. He fumbles the ball when he hits the ground a lot more so than a lot of other running backs. So I'd rather be design runs where he's out on the edges, which Greg Roman would do that. But I don't know. I just so unimpressed with the offense overall. So for fantasy, it might be fine, but in general, I don't think it's. I think you need someone who's creative and doesn't keep running the same offense regardless of who they have.
Right. I like the player. I agree. There's a lot of upside and ceiling there. I think I've seen enough to concern me, and then there's enough uncertainty that I have him like lower than you. I have him in a tier. I have him at 12, in a tier of 12 to 15. I fear that what we might get from him, and this is going to sound whatever because of what that guy's career has turned into. I fear what we might get from Justin Fields is like when Russell Wilson was good. And that might be just what he is, that what he tops out at. I have him in a tier with Purdy, Love, and Tua. And I will tell you that, from folks that I hear, see, read, talk to, the idea of having Fields over those guys is not a popular one. We're going to talk about at least one of them in a little bit. And so I am saying, that I'm baking in the situation is going to improve, the upside, that I like the player. I guess I just settle a little lower than you are. Would it surprise me if this time next year we're talking about Fields in the same conversation that we're talking about Anthony Richardson, Kyler Murray, Justin Herbert? No, that would not surprise me. Would it not surprise me if we're talking about Justin Fields in the same conversation we're talking about Deshaun Watson, Daniel Jones, and Will Levis? I don't know that would surprise me much either. And I think that's your wide range of outcomes.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think some of that goes into how much you bake into rushing upside with your quarterbacks. Like I think I put a little more stock into that than you do just based on past talks we've had. Because I mean, he rushed for 1,100 yards last year or in 2021. One of those, he rushed for over 1,000 yards already. So I think he has more rushing upside than Russell Wilson did. And I think Russell Wilson was better at making reads and quick throws, accurate throws. But you're right. There's a wide range of outcomes, and I'm just being optimistic and just hoping for the best.
Yeah, I guess when I meant Russ, I meant like level and value, not necessarily the type of player.
Not elite, but not
yeah.
kind of middle of the road for fan.
So all right. Is there any thoughts you have about, ways that you would acquire, prices, tier up, tier down, things you'd sell for, anything like that?
Honestly, because I have him ranked higher, I would try. And if you want to upgrade your quarterback, I'm okay with, and this might be unpopular, moving Dak Prescott for Justin Fields and maybe get something on top of Fields depending on who you trade with. Because I have Fields higher, but I don't know if that's too popular to have Fields ahead of Dak. I think just given the age, and I think Dak's upside's already been reached, and I don't think Justin Fields' upside has. So if you're not necessarily trying to win this year, I'm okay with turning someone like Dak or even Tua if they have Tua ahead. Someone that do a feel for your group and kind of see how people feel about them.
There's a lot of leagues where you can get Fields plus for Love.
Yeah, I would do that.
And depending on the plus, it's very interesting. So why don't we then transition to my first quarterback that I'm going to talk about, and that's Jordan Love. Let me tell you my love story, if you will. Right. So he gets drafted in one of those situations where a team trades up into the first round to get that 5th-year option for him. Right. And widely criticized was the pick. Not only were they not grabbing weapons for Aaron Rodgers, but they were taking a guy with, I don't know, like a 3rd, 4th round grade, in the end of the first. Toolsy, tradesy, very unrefined, very inconsistent, needed development. Right now, Matt Waldman talks about this a lot, that the NFL has a quarterback development problem. Right. That and he says it in a lot of words and very eloquently. What I'm saying is not necessarily a paraphrase of him, but what I see is the NFL is far too impatient and doesn't differentiate enough from the quarterbacks who need time to sit a little bit and develop, and the ones they throw right into the Lions' net, right? So to the Packers' credit, they've developed this quarterback well, right? To Love's credit, he certainly in the 3 or 4 years he was sitting behind Rodgers clearly applied himself, learned a lot, got better as a quarterback and as a football player, right? Um, that I think, and I will also say, a little foreshadowing of rookie talk. I think the success story of a guy like Love is going to maybe bump the draft stock of guys like Bo Nix and JJ McCarthy as the type that can be taken in that, trade up into the first to get that fifth year and develop them a little bit, So I think he's proof of concept that maybe the NFL can learn from their mistakes and develop, right? So he starts this year as a starter. I think I had him in like the early 20s as in my quarterback rankings, and first few weeks on fire, but running way hot with TD efficiency, and I was expecting regression. He fell back to earth mid-season, right? And it was like, okay, that's the Jordan Love that I know, right? Inconsistent, and it sort of levels out at mediocre, if you will, although that's maybe not a good word, but like middling value and confidence because of the volatility, right? But young pass catcher is a good coach and a good scheme, so he's gonna be helped by that, right? Where I messed up was after Thanksgiving. From Thanksgiving onward, he was on fire, and I was a little slow to bring him up the rankings, right? The case I think against him is still the idea for me personally that I just don't think the all-around talent is there as much as some of these other quarterbacks, that I can be more trusting and certain of their consistency, right? Like another thing with Love too is he's running hot on like throwing off his back foot. I think there's a couple plays where literally like when the ball was released, technically both feet were like not on the ground, right? And so can he sit in that pocket and deliver that pass on platform with his feet set a lot consistently? I think that's still in question, but I like I said, I want to give him credit for developing well. He is helped well by the coach and the scheme. The coach kind of, especially after Thanksgiving, said, "I'm going to trust Love more. We're going to throw the ball, deeper more." He grew along with his pass catchers, kind of like they're all young and they're all kind of growing together, and that's a very good thing. The Packers' offense is very intriguing going into next year. I think we were talking about this a little bit last week when we were talking about Christian Watson, with all the young pass catchers they have and a quarterback who, even if you give him an extension, isn't going to break the bank. It's probably going to be more of like a, Daniel Jones-ish extension, maybe even a little less, 2 years with an out, but like pretty good money up front, that sort of thing, right? So as you can see by me going back and forth between case for and case against, I'm still pretty torn about Love, but certainly higher than I was before. Certainly believe in it more, and certainly admit that I was too slow to bring him up the ranks. I still have him at 14 in that tier of 12 to 15 that we were talking about. He's in there with Fields, Purdy, and Tua. And to me, he's in there with Purdy and Tua and a little bit above Goff, because those are the guys where that's right on the line of quarterback one and quarterback two in my super flex. And that's right on the line of, is the team winning because of him or is the team winning with him? And is he more likely to lose you a game than win you a game? Probably not anymore. But I also don't know that he's exponentially more likely to win you a game than he is to lose you a game. That said, the market, I think, is a little too hot on him. Both KTC and Fantasy Calc have him aggregated at quarterback 9, and that's just a little rich for my blood. Maybe I'm still a little slow. I mean, the guy can play. Like, clearly, he's a starting quarterback. I'll be fine with him as my quarterback 2 in a super flex. I'm not comfortable with him as my quarterback 1, right? So like, but at the same time, let's look at this crystal ball, and like a year from now, is it possible that he's going to be above Purdy, Tua, T-Law, and Fields? Like, could you see that? Like, that's not out of the question. He's got a chance to be a top 8 or 9 quarterback in Dynasty. In fact, if I'm being pessimistic about Trevor and his team and his weapons and his coaching and that development, even though, again, credit to him, he was banged up a lot this season. I would not be shocked if I'm valuing Jordan Love more than I'm valuing Trevor Lawrence a year from now. I'd be surprised, but not shocked. So, like, is he the type of guy that's going to be able to vault into that top 6 or 8 or 9 quarterbacks? I don't think so, but I wouldn't be shocked. And I think that's what my ranking and my sentiment about him reflects. On the trade market, I've seen him traded straight up for Deshaun Watson, who I'm going to talk a little bit about later. I saw him go straight up. I'm sorry, Love in a second for Jacobs, Kamara, and Geno. If I'm a contender, I'm taking the Jacobs, Kamara, and Geno side probably. But why are you even making that trade in January? You're not setting lineups. Like, get the value in the portfolio of Love in the second. Love and JSN for Burrow, Mingo, and a third. So, like, I mean, it's essentially Love and JSN for Burrow at that point. Yeah. That's an interesting one, right? Because JSN was on our uncertainty episode last week. Burrow, coming back from the injury, we like him a lot, but is the gap between Love and Burrow JSN at this point? That's a really interesting one. What do you think about that one?
I think I'd take the JSN side. Because I'm right with you on Love. I have him at 15, and there's a chance to move him up 1 or 2 spots, but I don't ever really see him cracking the top 10. But I could see JSN cracking the top 10 at wide receivers. So I think I'd take the upside in the young receiver and younger quarterback in that one.
So I still think his ceiling is ultimately lower than, say, I don't know, Burrow, Stroud, Richardson, Lawrence. I think arguably, Kyler and Fields as well. But I do think, he could still have room to grow and be even a little better next year. He has got young passers to grow with. He's got the solid coaching. He's got a stable team situation. They might bring back Aaron Jones. Like, Aaron Jones, he's going to be freaky value next year. Their cap is negative $7.4 million. So, how they're going to move things around and restructure things and do draft picks, they're probably going to be focusing on defense. They fired their defensive coordinator. I'd like to see them shore up the offensive line a little bit too. They could draft another wide receiver and make this team really annoying and be, Love is the only guy that we want. So, moving forward, are you letting the love wash over you, or are you still on the fence and slightly skeptical?
I'm on the fence, but it's not out of skepticism. It's more, you worded it perfectly. I think they're winning with him, not because of him. And I think that's because they have 2 really good young tight ends. They have 4 or 5 really good young wide receivers. And I think that's just a really good spot for a quarterback like him to be in. He gets to grow with his teammates. He's probably, at least for the guys who aren't rookies this year, has probably played with them on practice squad and got plenty of reps with them. So they have pretty good reps. And I think if they could get their line going and keep Aaron Jones, actually having a running game would just help him even more, because there for a while, A.J. Dillon's not an ideal starting running back for your team. So I think the run game was really bad, and he did good without it. But I think it's not as bad as Purdy or maybe even Tua, but I do think they are winning with him, not just because of him. Because he played good in the playoffs, but we also saw glimpses of what we saw coming out of Utah State, where it's like the talent's there, but makes a pretty bad mistake sometimes, and sometimes you're second guessing. But I like him at 15. I think he's got decent upside, just not as much as a lot of other quarterbacks, like you said.
So just to add a little bit more sprinkle about how the market's a little hotter than we are, I heard a podcast with 2 Dynasty guys that I like a lot. I like the kinds of conversations they have, and that's Chad Parsons and Jordan McNamara on Dynasty Think Tank. They do a good job there. They also each have their own independent content. Check them out. But because they said it, I put weight into it. It got me thinking. Their estimation is that the gap between Stroud and Love is entirely too large. It's artificial, and it's largely carried by age and priors than it is like what it should be. And also, I saw another person tweet the other day. They saw Love go, I think, 107 or 109 in a startup.
That's wild. I think CJ Stroud being 22, coming in his first year doing this, I don't think it's artificial. I think it's completely warranted.
I mean, if you take Jordan Love at 107 or 109, it's one of those things where it's got a shot of at its 85 percentile outcome, 85th percentile outcome of looking good a year from now, right? But like right now, that's a waste of startup value. You could trade way down and get a Jordan Love. I'm sorry. I needed to talk about it, not only because it's been on my mind and it's a guy I've wrestled with a lot this year, but there's a person on Twitter that's been hounding me and kind of poking the bear a little bit with me about Love all year. And I messaged them today and said, we're going to talk about Love. So I want them to be able to see me say, I was a little wrong. I was a little slow, and that sort of thing. Yeah. All right. Next up.
So real quick, to shore up to Jordan Love, I have a trade I was going to see how you feel. I traded Jordan Love away in a league that I have Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and Baker Mayfield. So I also had Love, and I lost a running back and tight end injury. So I traded Jordan Love for James Cook and Dallas Goedert.
When the question I would have is, when did you make that trade?
It says 2 months ago. It was a little bit after middle of the season. It was when I realized I knew I was going to be a playoff team and needed to. Because I finished second in this league and lost to the guy I made this trade to. Not because of the trade, but
I think that trade was the trade to make then. I think you could get more for him now, but that's not what you were saying. Like you were trying to win. So I think at that point in the season, that was a fine trade to make. I mean, obviously, Love's value shot up, but you did what you needed to do, and his value isn't what it is today. When it was then, you couldn't get really much more for him, I think, then. So
And I even, I profited from that league because I got second place, and I wouldn't have just having Love on my bench and whoever else I had. So even if I lost that trade, I'm okay with it because it helped me, make a little bit of money. So.
Who's your next guy?
I'm going to jump off the quarterbacks for a minute, and I'm going to let's go with Stefon Diggs. So he's one where I'm with the market on, but this is more of a sentiment on Twitter, social media from people not doing rankings who are a little more sour on him than I am. So I have him ranked as wide receiver 25. KTC has him at 27, Fantasy Calc at 26. So I'm right with the market as far as that goes. But I think giving all the situation that went on in Buffalo, changing offensive coordinators throughout the year, I think they really simplified the offense down to where they can make it an easy switch, make some fundamental changes. And I think Stefon Diggs just ended up taking the negative end of that because he still got targeted at a pretty good rate, still had 7 to 9 targets most games. The yards are way down and the touchdowns dropped because they started running the ball more and throwing it to James Cook more. I like that recipe for the team as a whole. And this is just me hoping that after a full offseason, they'll figure out a way, whether it's Joe Brady or they bring somebody else in, to not only keep showcasing James Cook and running the ball, but also to get Diggs back involved because he's clearly the best playmaker on the team. I don't know if Gabe Davis will be back next year. I've even seen some things, no one hinted that they have him ranked higher, but they were saying Khalil Shakir did better down the stretch of the year. And statistically, yeah. But I think just that sentiment of comparing the two is really just showing how low some people are on Stefon Diggs. I don't think his drop-off was performance or him being slow, being old, and just dropping off. I think there's just a lot of context that goes as far as team chemistry, team builds when you make changes during the middle of the season on a contending team with a lot of mouths to feed. You got Josh Allen, James Cook got the ball a lot more. You also got Knox, Kincaid. So I think there's just a lot of stuff going on. I don't know if Diggs and Allen were on the best terms during the season, but they seem to be good after their loss. So I think things are going to be better. I don't think he's a top 20 wide receiver anymore, but I think people are a little sour on him because I actually did a startup mock with the CBS, some people from CBS, and I got Diggs in round 7 at the end of round 7. And I'm pretty happy with that in a startup if I'm trying to win now. And I think that's a little later than he should be going.
Yeah, I mean, he was going like late third,
Yeah.
pre
Yep.
this season. So, yeah, I'm a little low. I mean, I got him at 30, but in a tier of 27 to 32, with mostly it's essentially like old or old-ish guys that are like, it's just kind of that's where they are. They're solid, but so so that would be like Cup, Devontae Adams, McLaurin, Diggs, Mike Evans, and Keenan Allen, right? So one thing with Diggs and all this change that you were talking about was his ADOT went down too, right? And that really affected his production. And I don't know, like, there's all the, is he a diva? Is he happy? Does he want to be? But like, I think it's just a lot of factors coming together, like you said, and turning 30 is one of them. He's a very good route runner, so like that kind of stuff holds up better than just like overall speed does sometimes. So, but I guess I'll reference another person whose content and opinion I respect, Adam Harstad. Sort of historically looked at wide receivers when they turn 30. And, he sort of jokingly said, a few years ago, you would ironically say, oh, I guess that guy's 30. He must be washed up. Ha, ha, ha. And then like trade for him and like, scoop up the value. Right. And like now you're saying that unironically because it's appearing like 30, 31 is really solidifying as an age cliff. I'm not putting words in his mouth, just from the numbers that he showed on the tweet. It really is appearing that 30 or 31 is really solidifying as an age cliff for wide receivers and something that we have to worry about, which, I know it's unpopular, but honestly, like, that's, I think, one reason why I'm not, really buying in on Tyreek as much going into 2024. Like, I know that like he can be the exception and he's a freak and all that, but he is the age that he is. He has said, he's going to try to retire after 2025. Speed often doesn't age well, although he is quick too. But that's a conversation for another day, I suppose. But yeah. So with Diggs, I guess you're advising. I mean, as we say, everybody's a buy and everybody's a sell. But are you generally saying that the value has a good chance of going up from your acquisition cost right now?
I think it should, but this is what I meant by sentiment on Twitter. I don't think it will unless they bring in like a really good OC. I think if things just stay the same and they go with Joe Brady, I don't think it will go up. And I think that will create a pretty good buy opportunity there because it shouldn't cost you a first round of any sort if he drops that much. Like, I'm fine with parting ways with a second round pick of any year just to try and get him and just hope that you can at least get a top 20 wide receiver back.
All right, so let's professional transition this one too and ask you, what side do you want? Hollywood in a second or Diggs in a fifth?
That's tough. I just dropped Hollywood down in my rankings a little bit. I think I still take the second in Hollywood, though. Just given the age, I've always been a little higher on Hollywood, but I don't ever really try and dock people too much on injuries, but he hasn't really been healthy that much. But when he's out there, I think he's maybe not as good as Diggs, but pretty close, and you get a pretty significant difference between a second and a fifth.
And he is the next guy that I'm going to talk about, Hollywood Brown, sort of the narratives, the case for him and the case against him. Heavily targeted, very good air yards, when available, as you mentioned, right? He's had some injury stuff, and I think also, if I'm not mistaken, more than once in the same foot or something like that, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's
so that's not great. He's a free agent, and he can go to a good situation. He's a free agent, and he can go to a bad situation. He's also kind of got like a tweener size and role to him. Like, he plays largely on the outside, but he's a little smaller and faster than like the type of boundary guys that we normally think of, And so, how many offenses does that fit into? I have him ranked 30, and also just the team situations in Arizona have hurt his production. So he's sort of very, very much fallen in the market. I have him at 34 in a tier of 33 to 41. KTC is expectedly lower on him at 42. Fantasy Calc is kind of right in there with me at 36. One thing that we have to think about is his future because he is a free agent. Arizona has plenty of draft picks, Marvin Harrison plus whoever else they're going to get. It's a very deep wide receiver class. They do have a lot of money to address other needs and possibly even wide receiver. So I think he's likely gone, right? Because we see a lot of these guys that get to the market at 26 or 27 as wide receivers. They got to the market for a reason, right? Like if you've got a really good young productive receiver, you at least tag him, try to sign him to that second contract, right? The guys that tend to switch teams and really pop off usually are guys who get traded, not the guys who made it to free agency for their second contract. And so I see him moving on, but I see him probably people are going to overpay for Hollywood Brown in a bad free agent wide receiver class, kind of like they overpaid for Christian Kirk. I think he's gonna get that type of contract. He could get even a worse one though, because obviously there's plenty of rookies available, so that dampens the value of a 26.6-year-old free agent wide receiver who's been injured. But I think there's I don't want to say that it's bottomed out, but like I think there's more of a chance for the value to go up from this point. He signed somewhere. People want to see the optimism than it does to go down. Let's see. Hollywood or Mingo in a second.
Give me Hollywood. I didn't really like what I saw at Mingo.
Yeah, he was like one of the worst rookie wide receivers. Hollywood and Trevor Lawrence. Daniel Jones and 224 firsts. We don't know where the firsts are, but
that one's actually close because I've been trying to get a lot of 24 firsts because I think that first round's pretty good. I think I'm gonna take a shot on the first. Well, no, it's Daniel Jones. No, give me Lawrence. Give me Lawrence in Hollywood. I think Daniel Jones could fall off pretty quickly.
I think really the Giants can get out of the contract after this year, so they really are just going to kind of, I think, maybe give him all right, here's one more year, here's another weapon, here's a couple more offensive linemen, it's put up or shut up time.
Yeah, give me Lawrence on that side.
Yeah, Hollywood and Rashid Shaheed for David Njoku. I'm going to assume tight end premium there.
Look. This one's tough for me because I love Njoku. Everyone told me I overdrafted him this year in the 7th or 8th rounds when I didn't have a tight end. I still think I take Shaheed. I love Rashid Shaheed. Shaheed. I think I take that side.
Let's also, those people were right until Joe Flacco got to town. And Joe Flacco may not
also,
quarterback one next year.
David Njoku burned off half of his face. So
yeah.
Playing with a type of injury like that is got to be tough.
All right, here's a wild one for you. I think it's wild. Hollywood and a 26 first for Xavier Gibson and a 24 first. Now, if that 24 first is 102, okay, we're talking. But I can see the path to Gibson being a better than McCole Hardman. McCole Hardman, but it's it just these numbers. I don't know that 24 first better be the top 3 or 4 picks. Otherwise, this is wild. Yeah.
I didn't have talking about Xavier Gibson in a trade on my 2024 bingo card. So
one last one. I think it's interesting because I think it speaks to sort of running backs in the offseason and two guys that I think are also a little uncertain. The whole league is uncertain. Hollywood and a first and a second for Kenneth Walker and DK Metcalf.
So Hollywood, a first and a second for DK.
And Kenneth Walker.
Ooh, yeah, give me DK and Kenneth Walker then.
That one's interesting. Because, like, I'm a little bit of a Walker. Like, I have him whatever ranked at like 9 or 10 or whatever, but like I just don't like him as much as some other people do.
That says more about running backs than him, though.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you about Hollywood.
Yeah.
Should we take the case of Hollywood not being able to stay consistently healthy as a caution tale for someone like Tank Dell? Because I was looking at them, they're similar height. Marquise has a little more weight on him, and their stats look similar through the first 2 years of Marquise Brown's professional career. Both had 600-700 yards, 7 or 8 touchdowns, especially leg injuries. Should we take that and maybe not necessarily fade Dell, but be like, this is a problem that guys that size have? Or is that just person to person?
I think I think the injuries are very different. I think it's person to person. I think you could argue that Dell has a better path to being very explosive and efficient and productive than Hollywood ever could have had in his last couple seasons. And I'm gonna hope maybe that whoever is calling plays next year, whether it's Slowick or anybody else, maybe rethinks having their 163-pound wide receiver blocking on the goal line. But those things are kind of freak injuries, right? I mean, we could also now have that conversation about Devon Achane, who counting the preseason had like 4 injuries in the same year where he missed time. So like,
Yeah, and I should preface that by saying to anyone who didn't listen to the other shows, I am a Tank Dell guy. One of my hot takes is that he'd be the best receiver on that team this year. So I'm not saying putting any like shade on Tank Dell. It's just something, a guy that size, something to think about.
Who's your next guy?
I'm going to go with running back because we kind of touched on Kenneth Walker, and I'm going to briefly mention him. I'm going to talk about Kyren Williams here. And I was a little surprised by this. I thought I was going to be ahead of market because I was considerably higher on Williams before the season started. But I think having him top 7 is too risky. I have him at RB10. KTC has him at RB6, and Fantasy Calc has a top 5 running back. I just think that's too risky. Some people have the case against him has been they're going to bring in someone the way McVay's always done in the past and bring somebody else in, bring someone new, more fresh, because they decided they did that to Darrell Williams, some other guys, but Kyren Williams is a lot better than Darrell Henderson, not Williams, Darrell Henderson, and some of the other Cam Akers. So I think if they do bring somebody in, I think it'll be a good thing, and it'll keep Williams from having to get 20 touches a game to where he will get hurt like he has in the past. I think he's more of a 15 to 17 touch guy with an occasional game of 20 touches if you're running the ball well, but I don't think he should be used the way they used him this year. So I think bringing somebody in will just help his long-term value. Like, it might not make him the RB2 or 3 points per game like he is now, but he'll still be a top 10 running back all season. And I just really cannot justify putting him ahead of guys like Devon Achane, who has immense upside on that offense, Jonathan Taylor, Kenneth Walker, Etienne, and Saquon. Those are all guys ahead of him that other sites don't. And I just at this point can't justify putting him ahead of guys like that. Maybe Achane, but the other ones like Jonathan Taylor, Kenneth Walker, I think they've shown even if other guys come in, they're still going to be the main back. And I think you should kind of check the market in your league. If you have someone who has him as a top 5 or is really high on him, go ahead and try to sell him. If not, if you can't find someone who you can get a lot of value for, just hold him and reap the rewards, because I do think he's a really good running back. I think he's just, like you said a couple episodes ago, he's a good football player as far as like a toolsy guy who runs 4.3, 4.4. I just think he knows where to go, knows where to be, and knows how to hit the holes right. And I think he's going to have really good touchdown upside because he's good in the goal line.
Well, wait, Kyren 4.3, 4.4?
No, I'm saying he doesn't have like the 4.3, 4.4 speed, but he's really good at football and just knows how to play and knows how to always do the right thing on the field.
Yeah, for sure. I have him 8th, but it's one of those like, who else am I going to put there? I can justify having him ahead of Achane, who I have at 10. I think with the presence of Mostert and the continuing evolution of that offense, and and the fact that he had like 4 injuries this year where he missed time. Like he may have great contact balance for his size, right? And he may look better running between the tackles than we think a guy at that weight does, but I don't know that like he's going to have to get there on like 10 touches a game all the time for you to like really like but back to Kyren, right? Kyren is an example of one thing I'm going to talk about a little bit later, where like I have a position and then in the market like goes past me and I'm like, what the fuck are you doing, right? So I defended him even after the bad combine as a guy who had good pass pro and good pass catching skills, whose play speed was very good and who could have a role in the NFL. Remember, he started out that rookie year with that foot injury, and that delays, the timeline, right? And they were rotating in guys, that they trusted, like Darrell Henderson, and they still had Akers and that sort of thing, right? And here's the thing about Williams, right? It's a knock, but it's also not a knock in that he's running against completely not empty, but like boxes, right? Because they're not telegraphing run, because they use 11 personnel on every play and then just motion guys into things that are different. They have like, a concept where they run a lot of different types of plays out of like one formation or concept, right? And so he's benefiting from that, which is a knock on the fact that he is not very toolsy and is Tracy and is more of a football player, but it's a plus because, well, he's on a rookie contract in a Sean McVay system, and situation isn't going to change anytime soon, right? And he McVay loves Kyren Williams, and they have so many needs and so few draft picks. Like is any running back that they're going to bring in going to be the level where it bothers Williams's touches? I don't know. I'm kind of torn on him too. Like I liked the player more than everybody else did, and now I'm a little more skeptical than the player than a lot of other people are. I mean, just like you said, there might be somebody who thinks he's top 5, right? There might be somebody who's like, "Hey, I got a 5th round, unathletic running back who hit, time to trade." You may actually even be able to get him cheap too. Who knows? But
I'll just say this. I think there's a chance of Ronnie Rivers becoming fantasy relevant before I think there is them drafting someone who's just going to completely take Kyren off the field and make him like a bust at where he's going. Like I'm fine with drafting him in the 3rd round, 3rd, 4th round. If you want to get one good running back, then wait. I'm fine with that.
And it's a good running back to get and wait because he does have that pass catching, upside and TD equity. So I guess I'll talk about a running back with uncertainty and indecision. And that's Tony Pollard. Talk about a roller coaster year that he had. The story we all know, efficiency monster when Zeke was there. Get this guy more touches. And then he gets the bigger workload and he kind of struggles, right? But here's the but, right? Like he did improve toward the end of the year. And there are some folks who say, well, maybe he wasn't fully healed from that injury, and had to get better and better and better from that injury as the year goes on. Maybe he started the year healthy enough to play, but not healthy enough to be his best, right? And there is the chance that he goes somewhere in free agency that will use him well, get him back down to 1A or 1B level touches in a more committee structure and not give him that volume and not ask him to go between the tackles as much. At the same time, we have a running back who is of a certain age, right? And had a down year. He was inefficient. He had a lot of expected fantasy points based on usage, right? Because this is David Guttieri on Twitter, who, by the way, really good tight end guy. The market has overcorrected on Tony Pollard. He's the only running back who posted 250 plus carries, 50 plus receptions, and a top 10 PFF rushing grade this year, who is priced outside the top 100 in Dynasty. Now, I don't know what he's basing outside the top 100 in Dynasty on, whether it's like current ADP or starter. I don't really know, but that's a lot of usage, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that's a lot of like efficiency and production that we saw. So I do think he can be in the sense that any running back in January is a buy, which I don't really recommend doing too much of that. He for me would be one of them, right? Because I think it's another situation like Hollywood where I don't think the value is going to get much lower. It's got more of a chance of going up if he goes somewhere that looks good as far as like his usage, and scheme and all that goes. So like I'm kind of like a little bit, sunnier on Pollard, especially than KTC. Surprise, surprise. I have him at RB14 in a tier of 11 to 16, and KTC has him down at 23. Fantasy Calc a little more realistic at 15. He's gone straight up for Kamara. Probably give me Pollard there. Pollard and Gus Bus for Pickens. I mean, you got to really be leaning into the positive side of Pickens' volatility there. I'm probably taking the wide receiver who's young who has some upside, but I could argue one way or the other. Someone got Kendre Miller in a 25 first for Pollard. Like that's starting to be where I move over to like give me the non-Pollard side. So
Yeah.
I've seen him go for a second. I've seen him go for a second and third. I traded him for a first and second earlier in the season before the narrative about him was bad. I don't think he's going to be back in Dallas. They got negative 23 million in the cap. They probably got other needs and can get cheap running backs to do what they need the running backs to do. He's both hurt by the fact that free agent running backs are better than rookie running backs because he's got competition, but he's helped by the fact that free agent running backs are better than rookie running backs because, where he goes, a team isn't necessarily going to draft somebody that's going to eat too much into his touches. So I would be sunnier and more optimistic, I think, than market about Tony Pollard because I'm expecting the value to go up from where it is now.
Yeah, I agree with you. I have him, and Tony Pollard was one of my biggest followers. I have him at RB16 at the start of a new tier, right ahead of Ramondre and Pacheco. So I'm with you. I think he was like that tweet. I think I saw that tweet from David, and that made a lot of sense. It's like he's been good, but he wasn't top 5 like a lot of people were, including myself, were drafting him to be. So he was a disappointment in that aspect, but he had good usage, still had decent efficiency. It just wasn't what he had when he was only getting 10 touches a game behind Zeke, which is understandable. And honestly, I think that's something to kind of note moving forward. Guys like that who maybe even like Kyron Williams, once he actually does get 20 touches a game for a full season, he'll either not last or the efficiency will drop. Even DeAndre Swift is another one that kind of fits that bill.
Here's my prediction, right? I shouldn't say prediction, but hypothetically, I think it's possible that we have the return of the older running back. And what do I mean by that? Well, we've got a down rookie class, a decent free agent class, but I think that coaches, offensive coordinators, they're going to look around and say, if I got an Eckler but limited his touches, to 1B level, if I got a Kamara and limited his touches even more, if I took a Pollard, limited his touches, if Saquon goes to somewhere like the Texans that can use him really well and mix in cheap running backs to take some of the load off, like we may see these older running backs who we all said, screw you as you're aging into your second contracts. And we had this, two pretty good, especially the 2023, we thought running backs coming. Now it might be revenge of the old people. I don't know, just something to think about. Who do you think your next person is?
So I'm going to touch on another quarterback, and this one I don't have as much insight about, but it's someone that I've kind of seen a few takes on Twitter that made me bring it up. It's Bryce Young. I'm right on market with KTC and Fantasy Calc. I have him at QB 17. KTC also has him at 17, Fantasy Calc at 18. The main thing that made me want to bring up Bryce Young is I've seen some people, and I don't know, I haven't looked at your rankings in a while, are saying that now they have Will Levis ahead of Bryce Young. I just don't see that. And I've seen more than one person say that on Twitter. I just think that's kind of silly because I don't think Will Levis would have done anything more than Bryce Young did with what was going on in Carolina. That was an absolutely horrible situation with the head coach being fired in his first season midway through the year. The weapons that myself included thought were going to be pretty decent ended up being really bad. They had to rely on a 34-year-old Adam Thielen, and even he tailored off there towards the end. Mingo was bad. Terrace Marshall is just Terrace Marshall. I think Hurst got hurt, so they didn't really have a tight end. I just really holding and hoping on to the fact that the front office will get it together and build some kind of a team around him that's actually decent. And I think the only way you go by Young right now is if you're either decent on quarterback and you have a year or two to wait, or if you're just completely rebuilding. Because I think now's a good buy window, but I think it's going to be a good 2 or 3 year window before he actually gets weapons around him and maybe a competent coaching staff. Because that team looks like they're in shambles right now. Like just looking at the situation, I don't know what their cap space is like, but I don't think they have a ton of draft capital because of the trade to get him. They don't have good weapons there. So something's going to have to change. I think it's going to be a few years, but I think kind of like Love sat for 3 or 4 years. I think Young still has a really good chance down the road to be a good quarterback and return value.
Yeah, I think, first of all, the Levis thing, all things considered, if you lay out every single factor, I just don't see how someone could have Levis above Bryce Young.
The situations are completely different.
I mean, Levis was as of December, I think 15th or something like that, Levis was the 4th worst QBR among qualifying quarterbacks, right? Now, don't get me wrong, he didn't have a great situation either with the offensive line and stuff in Tennessee and that sort of thing. But the idea that Levis somehow performed well enough to be valued where he's being valued is just weird. And that's the thing. Maybe I'm going to do a whole other episode about this. Is that obviously watching football is really fun and really good, and it certainly colors things with more information than just skimming through box scores, right? But when you have an island game where someone leads somebody on a game-winning drive, right? That overinflates his in a game where he scored less than 17 fantasy points, right? That's the kind of stuff that I think is pushing some of these guys, right? So yeah, I just having Levis in front of him right now is just crazy. I shouldn't say crazy. I don't like being dismissive and absolutist like that. It's something that I just don't see the reasoning behind it. I don't think I can get behind it, right? I have Young at 17, kind of around where you are. I think it's appropriate because if you're going to put him higher, then you're going to say okay, now I'm going to say he's above guys like Goff, Tua, Jordan Love, Purdy, right? I don't know that you can do that yet,
no.
Right? But to put him below guys like Deshaun Watson, Stafford, Cousins, Daniel Jones, what are you doing, right?
Yeah.
The thing that I didn't like about Young, but that I can sort of excuse because the situation was so bad, from the weapons to the vanilla offense to the coaching, all that, right? He seemed shook and didn't have confidence.
Yeah.
And we see guys that maybe aren't as talented, like a Levis and like a Love, throw some trust balls and have confidence and kind of YOLO it sometimes. And I want Bryce to tap into, that where's that BDE, right? Where's that I'm a mother 101 Alabama quarterback? He needs that again. And I'm hoping the guy responsible for Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield's recent good seasons, Dave Canales, their new hire, is someone who can help that happen.
Yeah, I think just watching some of the games, because I watched some of the games because they played the Falcons a few times, there were throws that he just chose not to make where it wasn't completely covered, but you had a tight window to fit it in, and he just didn't take that chance because I think that's a confidence thing. He'd rather not turn the ball over and take a sack instead of take a chance. And I would also argue that the situation in Tennessee was considerably better, even though they're not a good offense. They at least had Derrick Henry and DeAndre Hopkins. Those are two guys that you can get the ball to and know they're at least going to do pretty decent. Carolina didn't have that. Chuba Hubbard's a decent running back, but he shouldn't be an RB1, and your best receiver shouldn't be Adam Thielen at this point either. So
how dare you slander Miles Sanders and DJ Chark? How dare you?
I think Chark's a good value actually where he's going now, but it's not ideal.
All right, so professional transition. I'll go to a murky, uncertain, indecisive on my part quarterback, also in that same tier, and that's Deshaun Watson. But I think murky, indecision, and stuff for different reasons. I mean, Watson, just wow. How much of a pass do we give? I mean, let's obviously. I know we have to do this like every time. Let's take the off the field concerns and set them aside. Like really, let's set them aside, right? How much of a pass do we give him? It's his first like full season back, a first new season back. He loses Chubb, nagging injuries, right, and then eventually shut down for the year, right? Like at the same time, though, when he was playing, was mostly, he was right. As far as a passer of the ball goes, Joe Flacco was, even though he, is turnover prone, was a better passer of the football than Deshaun Watson was this year, right? Certainly, aside from the whole "is he a good person" with the massage stuff, it's the attitude. Like a lot of people were saying, like, okay, you're injured. Like, where are you on the sideline? Stop wearing sunglasses on the sideline. And I know some people can get a little, whatever, especially at black quarterbacks and things like that. But it's like if you had all this guaranteed money that they couldn't get rid of you, like how would you act? And so, there's even rumors that they're gonna bring Flacco back, and that could be someone nipping at his heels. I've got him at 18 in that tier of 16 to 18 with Goff and Bryce Young above him. Pretty much right in market. KTC 19, Fantasy Calc 17. And you're not really going to sell him. The vibes are so in shambles with him. You're not really going to get much for him. The question is, what do we think about him moving forward? Is that value going to go up? Is there a reason to be optimistic about anything about Deshaun Watson? I don't know. And that's really why he's on this episode. Like, is he going to be a guy who I want more than Fields and Purdy by the end of the year? I'm doubting that more and more, right? He's gone straight up for Love. Deshaun Watson in a second for a first. Deshaun Watson for Ridley, a first and a second. I think that's a pretty good deal. I might take the Ridley side on that one. Obviously, the contract, he's probably not going anywhere. His weapons, pretty good. Could be improving if, maybe Tillman takes a step up or they draft somebody there. He doesn't use the tight end, though, as much as Flacco does. So I don't know if that's a good thing for Njoku and Amari Cooper that Deshaun Watson's coming back. They're negative $20 million on the cap. Can they put together a nice little offense with Cooper and Elijah Moore and Njoku and Jerome Ford to ease some of the load off Chubb? And right, I think they can, but the key to all that working is Deshaun Watson. And I kind of have no idea whether to think he can or not.
Yeah, I have him I think one spot ahead of you, and I'm kind of with you. But one thing that is encouraging, at least for job security, he went, I think it was 4-1 as the starter. He didn't really turn the ball over much. And there's a part of me that feels like when the defense is right, that's more of what they want than someone who might throw 3 or 4 interceptions a game like Flacco, but also get you 300 yards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think the fact that he was winning games is a positive for just job security. I don't know about the talent because I don't think he was healthy. But I also kind of got the vibe, and this is me being purely speculative, that his heart just really wasn't in it. And I just don't know if it ever really will be, given everything that's going on. So I don't know. He's really hard to rank. I think the decent upside's still there. He didn't run the ball as much, which kind of comes with the age. But I'm with you. I do have a trade I made in our not a going for 2 staff league. And it's actually helped me win because I won the league. I traded away Deshaun Watson and a 25 first for Dak Prescott and a 25 third.
Yeah.
So Prescott and a third for Watson and a first, but they're 25.
I mean,
because I needed quarterback help, obviously, during the year.
Yeah, I think given the context of needing the quarterback to produce, that's a fine trade. And there's that classic line of you have time to get the 25 first back, and it's entirely possible that even at the end of this year, with Dak being a little older than Watson, that we're still going to want Dak more than Watson. Yeah. So yeah. And you're on. Speaking of old or something, or professional transition. I don't know. Your last guy is playing this weekend.
Yeah, and I've always been a fan of this guy, but I like him even more now because he's just trolling fans who are obviously upset over the dumbest shit. It's Travis Kelce. People really threw a hissy fit when he threw a heart sign up towards his girlfriend and brother who were up in the booth. I think this whole kerfuffle of people getting mad at Taylor Swift is hilarious. I love it. I hope they show her more on the TV just to watch these dudes get upset. But that being said, I'm still pretty good, like well above market on him. I have him as tight end 5. KTC has him at 9. And I had him at 6 behind Hawkinson, but with this ACL injury, I moved him back up just because I think there's still 2 good years left in him. I think people had too high of expectations for an older guy like him coming into the season with an injury. I think he had like a hyperextended knee, or he had an injury.
Mm-hmm.
He played through it, never missed time, as you kind of figure from a guy like that. And he was still good. He was still the tight end 2 on the year. So I think he kind of was unfairly treated because he wasn't the Travis Kelce we remember, who just broke fantasy from a tight end. And I think that's expected at his age, but I think if he's still out there with Patrick Mahomes, he's going to be the first look, even with Rice getting more looks. He's going to be the security blanket, and I still think he's going to get 7 to 9 catches a game, with the floor even being 4, and hopefully he gets a touchdown. So I think people are being a little too reactionary. I think he's still got two years left. I don't know what his contract's like, but I don't just see him just up and retiring because he's dating Taylor Swift now. I think people are just kind of looking into that too much. And yeah, in that mock with CBS, I got him in round 8. Right, I got Diggs and then Kelce on the 7-8 turn.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if that's a basis, but at that point, like, bye. He's still a top 5 tight end when he plays.
Yeah. I have him 6 in a tier of 6 to 8 with Kittle and Hawk. Hawk sort of parked at the bottom of that tier just because the ACL was late in the season.
Yep.
Unlike you, I still have Andrews at 1, but then all the young guys in front of him. And I think talking about Kelce in Dynasty, you have to talk about that in the context of McBride, Kincaid, Laporta, Pitts.
Yeah.
Right. Like, it's hard to put him ahead. Although you have to ask yourself the question, had he been healthy all year and performed better, how would we be talking about him? Right. He had the hyperextension, which I think takes usually more time than he took off. I think he only missed the 1 game, right?
Yeah.
The first game. And it was, from all reports, not unofficially banged up all year. And he's getting up there in age, but I think I think he's a candidate for a bounce back in production and value. I think, maybe they draft 1 more receiver to kind of rising tide lifts all boats. Pie gets bigger, more touchdowns get scored, that sort of thing. So I think there's reason to like Kelce, and there's reason to get in on him. I think even if you consider yourself a non-contender and a quote-unquote rebuilder, I mean, it's like, why would I buy a 34-year-old tight end in January? Well, because, I don't know, because in August, when the film of him, or July or whatever, of him being spry, and catching balls and right, like that's going to matter. Right. So yeah, I think, I agree he belongs on an indecision episode, but I also agree that I'm more on the optimistic side than not.
Yeah, and just to touch on tight ends, I have Kincaid at 9. While you have him as top 4. Yeah, I got Goddard, and maybe Goddard and Njoku, I could move him ahead of them and put him at 7. But yeah, right now I got McBride, Laporta, and Andrews in a tier of their own, 1, 2, 3. Then Pitts, Kelce, Hawk, and I probably need to move Kincaid above Goddard and Njoku, but still, I kind of forgot about him when you mentioned him up there in the top 3 or 4.
Yeah, well, I guess that's maybe another episode that we can do. The state of the tight end position with the young studs. So professional transition, staying in the AFC West. My final indecision is Quentin Johnson. All right, now let's talk about the narratives for and against the sort of saga with Quentin Johnson. You and I did not like him as a prospect coming out. We thought
Yep.
him as a first round in both the NFL draft. Well, especially rookie drafts. Where he was going to probably be disappointing if not a bust. And here's where that idea of and friend of the show Jacob Sanderson gave me this term, player take imposter syndrome. It's like I'm down on Quentin Johnson, right? And now the world is declaring him over, and I'm like, are we giving up completely? Right? Like already at 1 year after wide receiver, right? And so I think find myself maybe perhaps higher on him than some other people. I believe he can be, and I wrote about him in an article about like, what if I'm wrong about this player? One of the things I said is they should use him more as a big slot than what they're gonna probably do with him. I don't know that I have to. I didn't look up the alignments. I don't know what percentage he lined up inside and outside. I think it was more on the outside though. And you know, I keep coming back to something again that Chad Parsons and McNamara said. Like I think it was Parsons called him like a guy who's built like a condor. Taken into the first round. Attached to Justin Herbert, right? Like why not bet on that, right? And that reality is still there. Those three things, right, are still true. Um, the problem is he's got some bad company. I couldn't find that tweet, but we've talked about it before. So it's him, Rieger, and I forget the other. I think it was like Kevin White or Josh Doxson or something like that. We're the only three wide receivers to get first round capital and lower than 10th percentile in the three cone. And the ball skills just were not there. He did not develop as his hands and ball skills as much as you'd like in that first year. I have him at 47 at the bottom of a tier of 42 to 47 with other highly volatile assets with have uncertainty. KTC is a little more sour at 53, Fantasy Calc with me at 47. The value seems to be all over the place. I've seen him straight up for a third, for a second and a third, and straight up for a second, right? All in the last few days. I've seen him straight up for D-Hop, which is interesting. It's definitely more of an age thing. I've seen QJ and Brian Robinson for Musgrave. First of all, that better be like a 2.0 tight end premium or like a start two. But still, like, that shows you like how far down he's slid. I don't know that I'm taking Musgrave if it's not a start two or if it's at least like a 1.75. But then again, I can see a world where Brian Robinson and Quentin Johnson are both like much lower value than even they are now, fairly soon. Yeah. QJ in a second for Christian Kirk and James Conner. I'm taking Kirk and Conner there as sort of like just safer assets that I'm going to put on my roster at some point. Here's the thing. Lots of changes going on I was about to say San Diego, for the Los Angeles Chargers, right? We've got Mike Williams is almost definitely gone. They're in cap hell, and he's like, I think they can save like 20 million or something like that. Keenan Allen might be too. I don't expect it, but he's 23 million they can save if they move on from him. And they are, I believe, 70 something over the cap or something like that. So it's something to consider. Can he get a fresh start with Harbaugh? And whoever the new OC is? Will the ball skills ever develop? Will they use him as a big slot? One reason I'm worried, though, is they're highly attached to Brock Bowers as with the 5th pick overall in the NFL draft. I would not be surprised. Take the freakish tight end, weapon, that you don't even have to put a tight end designation on, really, and then you can get a more traditional wide receiver later because it's a deeper class. But that's also going to take away, I think, some of QJ's best role and best targets as a big slot with shorter ADOT and go do the yak. So I don't know that I'm completely ready to dismiss him. Like some people are, like it's over. He's a bust, because what the reality is that year 2 and 3 breakouts for wide receivers, even if those breakouts aren't sexy and are quiet, are actually more common still than the rookie year breakouts. It's just that the rookie ones are rookies and they're usually like higher end and we get more excited about them. All that to say, I don't know if I think QJ is undervalued at this point or if it's appropriate. I think some people are way too out on him, but relatively speaking, I'm right in line with what the market seems to be.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I have him at 48. I think you said you had him at 47, so we're right there at the same.
Yeah.
I think I'm only, if talking about trades, the only way I'm not sending out offers for Quentin Johnson. But what I am doing is if I feel like a trade's a little bit off and you need a little bit of value, I'm going to definitely try and throw him in, especially in a team where I'm looking to get a little younger and just see what happens. But I'm also not going out of my way to try and get him onto my teams. I probably won't be drafting him.
Are you in a situation where it's like, oh, I got QJ? Would you get out of QJ for a second and a third? Would you say, okay, I'll get out from this uncertain, bad vibesy wide receiver for a second and a third?
I think the only way I do that is if I'm on a team where I think I might need to get more draft capital because I think my team might be kind of waning. And I give that up knowing he's not going to contribute much. This year I might do that. But overall, if I can, I think I'm just going to try and hold and hope for better days, just given his yards after catch ability. So if I just really needed draft capital, maybe, but probably not. I think I'm just going to hold and just see what happens.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Especially if I spent what I did to get him.
We're almost at, although he could have a Rieger arc, but we're kind of at a, not going to get much worse value than this. Only go up kind of thing, right? So, we'll see.
Exactly.
All right. All right. So that does it for us. Please subscribe, rate, and review on the Going for Two Live podcast feed for audio. Please, if you're watching here on the YouTube or elsewhere, subscribe, like, notifications, comments, feed that algorithm monster. We must conquer the algorithm. Time for plugs. Josh, where are we finding you and your work?
You can find me on Twitter at Rotonaut, ROTONAUT. It's about getting into baseball season, so I will be just dunking on Mets fans throughout the offseason until the draft start. Besides that, though, I did just publish a slightly updated version of my Dynasty rankings. You can find those at goingfor2.com. I also took part in a collaboration article where I wrote a little blurb about Troy Franklin, who I can already tell is going to be one of my favorite receivers. You can find that on goingfor2.com, and here in the next month, as we get closer, I'm going to start doing some rookie write-ups, and that's all at the same website. So,
sounds good. My brother's a Mets fan, and every once in a while, I get a little bit of info based on texting with him and stuff like that. So apparently they lost out on both Japanese dudes, and they're just in shambles, and just it's a hard reset kind of thing, right? Is that what they're doing now?
Yeah, people are and I don't like Steve Cohen. I typically don't like billionaires that own teams like that and just flaunt their money around, but he did try his best. I think those decisions were just already set in stone, and there's not much to do. So I do think the Mets fans are being a little harsh on the ownership, but they still should have done more.
All right.
Everyone went to the Dodgers.
That happens, right?
Yeah.
All right. You can find me on Twitter at ffjunkie_rankings on goingfor2.com. Some writing up on goingfor2.com, which, along with Josh, is going to increase with a few rookie profiles. I also collabed on an article that's not yet published. It's a 5-round 24 rookie mock. I think it's going to be on SGPN, Sports Gambling Podcast Network. Dave Heilman, Dynasty Dorks, corralled us all together. It's going to be the only time that me and Pat Fitzmaurice are sharing any sort of fantasy football space ever. So that's going to be cool. But spoiler alert, I may or may not have taken a certain Oregon wide receiver and perhaps one of his teammates. Goingfor2.com not only has everything you need for redraft, dynasty, DFS, et cetera. It also has a little purple thing in the bottom right where you can log on to our Discord or join our Discord. It's going to be popping off with rookie mocks and chats and trade advice and that sort of thing. And we've got pretty much an audio or video podcast for you just about every day or night of the week. That'll do it for us. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.
Go Irish.